Welcome, everybody, to our session introduction for chapters 4 and 5. Before we start, I wanted to give us a quick reminder of the concept of under the sun. All this document that we're reading in Ecclesiastes is kind of like a thought experiment um, from Solomon. It's as though he's saying, hey, what would the world be like if we could fly? And now he's having all these discussions. Well, our shoes wouldn't wear out as fast, but, we need some kind of eye protection. And it's just this whole thought experiment. But the premise of his thought experiment is, what if there was nothing after death? Death was the end. If we died and that was the end of existence, what would it be like? That's what he's saying when he's talking about life under the sun. All roads, paths, lives lead to death. That's what he is helping us to experiment with in our discussion here. So, therefore, if it ends in death, everything you're doing is kind of meaningless. It's vapor. Your achievement, accumulating stuff, your wealth, influence that you have while you're alive, any fame you have, any accomplishments, guess what? It still ends in death. So, why bother? Just eat, drink, and be merry. Don't, try to aspire to much more. And this is where he tells us that if there is no purpose to our life and there's no justice in the end, God's not going to judge the living and the dead, which we know to be the truth.
Okay.
There is no accountability for our actions. So that's the thought experiment that we're under. Compare that to life under the sun, which is what we Christians believe, is that first of all, death is not the end. The works that we do here on earth don't give us salvation, but they do lay up treasures that are eternal in heaven. We get to take with us the fruit of our good works, which could be helping other brothers and sisters to discover Christ, or being able to take the talents that God has given us. And the man who had 5 talents doubled it to 10, and the man who had 2 talents doubled it to 2. And the man that hid his talents and didn't have it work for the Lord was chastised and told, "You wicked servant, why did you not at least get interest on it?" So we're told that our works matter here, and we are accountable to God. And all the injustices that we face, all the disappointments, all the things we see bad people doing good, it's just not fair. All that will be settled in the end. That's what life under the SON is like. Because this life that we have already is never, ever going to end. The believers will be eternally reflecting God's glory, and the unrepentant will endure God's eternal wrath. There is not just this non existence, which is what so much of chapter 4 and 5 deals with, but it is going to be life outside of God's grace if you are unrepentant. So that's the contrast here, is that, remember, Solomon is walking us through, what if there was no Jesus? What if there was no eternal life? So we're going to start looking at Ecclesiastes 4. He first talks about the loneliness, and he talks about how there's so much oppression in the world, and there's so many people that are tearful because they're oppressed. And then there's the competition that seems to drive achievement. And he says, hey, that's great. You're going to work hard, you're going to accomplish many things, and what it's going to earn you is jealousy. People are going to hate you for being successful. So, what good is that? He's also going to talk about isolation, and he's going to talk about a famous phrase about a cord, a strand of 3 cords. And it doesn't apply just to marriage, but it's also personal relationships, and how important it is to have these personal relationships so that we can bear one another's burden. We can celebrate one another's victories, and we can essentially keep one another warm, watch one another's back. He also brings out the point that popularity, if you think that's going to be the end all do all, if I can just be popular, if I could maybe make it to television, or I could be, a successful, it's all temporary. And again, that's that idea of under the sun. You're still going to die. So what's it worth? First couple of verses, he's going to address the oppressed who lack so much comfort, and how the powerful often abuse the power they have. And suffering is real. He laments this injustice, and he acknowledges that the world is deeply broken. Next few verses, he talks about rivalry and how competition seems to motivate many, but then it ends up in envy. It turns out all that, you know, keeping up with the Joneses and striving to be number one, you end up being number one, and everybody who's number two and down is going to be jealous. Everybody is going to be negative toward you. Um, we're going to learn that more is never enough. This is a lesson you wonder, how did we learn this? Well, here it is in the Bible telling us that you will not be fulfilled with earthly items. You should be content. And in fact, people who are often very wealthy and have many responsibilities, they're not content. Either they're continuously driven for more, or the mere fact of trying to hold on to what they have gives them no rest, and rest has its value. Again, I created these AI images here. Here he is bowing down to himself because achievement, my own achievement, can become an idol. I can, even if I don't forget that the talents I have, my math whiz and strength and, vocabulary and ability to read something once and remember it forever, whatever your gifting is, all those gifts were given to you by the Lord and intended to be used in service to care for one another. And sometimes you can say, no, these are my gifts. And in fact, I'm pretty smart and look at all the things I can do. I'm the goat. And suddenly that becomes an idol. You replace those things with what should be recognizing and using them to serve God. I've got your back. I thought that was funny. Uh, there is strength in companionship. He brings out that you really want to have two, better than one, friends to provide support. How much have our psychologists today said, loneliness is a worse killer than heart disease or any of the other cancers? It's people not having relationships, not being able to share, not being able to care, not being able to vicariously enjoy and vicariously support. So he talks about how important it is for community and how God really designed people to be in relationship. Remember when he created Adam, it got to, he listed off all the things that were good, but when he created Adam, he said it was not good that he was alone. It was the first negative condemnation that God gave the world. And he said, you know what? This is not good enough. I need a companion. And he created woman. We go on to verses 13 to 16, and he talks about you're going to see people who crave power, but remember, it's not stable. Leaders come and go, public opinion changes, any successes you have are temporary, and all that popularity is not going to satisfy you because all earthly kingdoms fade. From there, we're going to jump on to chapter 5. Here's our Solomon again. Good looking guy, but look, he's holding up all his wealth. And he's saying, hey, there's three things here. Money cannot satisfy. He brings that up again. So here's Solomon, who was probably among the richest men ever to exist. And he had all that he could, lay his hands on. He did not deny his eyes anything. And he was still never content in a world that was, when he knows that it's going to end in death. Why am I doing this? I'm going to die anyway. My health is failing. And, he has other observations here, such as, make sure that we revere God and make sure that anytime I make a commitment to God, that I keep that commitment.
Yeah.
Take a look at the first few verses. Um, God is to be revered anytime we're making commitments. I swear to God. Well, you better hold that oath. And if you've made it hastily and you're not able to keep whatever you're promising to God, it's better that you repent and ask for forgiveness than continue to just ignore the fact that you've made an empty promise. He goes on to verses 4 through 7, telling us to keep those commitments. Don't make rash promises, and our worship needs to be sincere. Here he is burdened by all his wealth. That once you have that, you're still never going to be satisfied. The power structure is going to disappoint, just layer upon layer of bureaucracy. The more money you have, the more people who want to take it from you, the more people who suck up to you, the more people who want to sell you services you don't need. How many people have we seen, be popular entertainers, hire all their friends only to go broke? I think of, I can't think of his name right now, the guy who did Hammer Time. It was a wealthy kid and within a few years, all his wealth had been squandered. And we hear about people who win the lottery and, suddenly are just attacked by vultures and lose that wealth so quickly. He talks about how possessions really are going to create burdens. He also talks about how riches on earth can vanish. Isn't it nice that we as Christians know we can lay up treasure in heaven? But here's a picture of him opening his safe, and guess what? It's been cleared out. You can have losses come suddenly. Any earthly gain should be viewed as temporary. And any of the security we think we have, it's very, very fragile. These are time-tested truths that we want to teach our young people so that they don't get caught up and waste decades of their life pursuing wealth, pursuing success without recognizing that they are ultimately accountable to God and that their gift should be used in service to Him. The greatest gift we can give somebody today is contentment with what they have. You have a number of God's blessings. Everybody enjoys blessings like, cooling rain and fresh air. And when you're exposed to these things, beautiful sunsets, these are the things that are contentments. And that joy comes from God. And if that contentment is learned, we're going to get the most out of this life under the sun. And we'll end there.